so if you're anything like me and you're wondering why is 22 so small, the number 22 small and the number 1.7 so large, it's actually because aperture or the f-stop is calculated by an inversely proportionate relationship. So it's the focal length over the diameter of the aperture opening. You don't have to memorize this. You don't have to know this. Just understand that's why it's an inversely proportionate relationship for those of you who understand math and all that good stuff. I just wanted to explain the why. So again, what happens is you have your camera, kind of love my lovely drawing here, and you are focusing on a specific thing that is known as the subject to camera distance. So whatever you focus on, and then based on the aperture you set, then you have a specific depth of field of what's in the range of focus. That's the depth of field. It's the range of focus, and there's a part in front and behind. And sometimes that range can be very big or it can be very small. So obviously, here's a great example, two gorgeous photos where you have a nice leading line shot. Even the clouds here, look at this. This road leads back, but even the clouds are creating a leading line back to a point. So in both of these cases, right, great depth of field. Everything's in focus. Small aperture. So size of the aperture clearly has a tremendous impact on how we view a photo. So you can clearly see in this example over here, the background behind this woman is very clear and crisp compared to this one over here. And sometimes with a portrait photo, this is actually not as desirable. Sometimes you want the background to be more out of focus, so your focus is on the person and not on the background, or the background's not competing for your attention. Another thing in this, if you're a little confused right now about this is okay. So same exact subject matter, shot, and if you look carefully at the aperture in both of these in the shutter, so 1/1000th of a second, this is a very fast aperture, and you needed shutter speed, and the aperture is 5.6, which is pretty big. Okay, this is letting in the same amount of light, but it's creating a nearer depth of field as this photo over here, which has an aperture of f22. That's a very small aperture with a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, which is pretty slow. Same photo, but look at the difference. You can see how things are much more crisper and sharper over here, but it's confusing because you have very different settings up here and you get very different results down here. And you really have to think about which one you kind of want to sacrifice, depth of field or shutter speed control. So that's something, I'm just going to show you. This is called a merger. It happens all the time where someone takes a photo and they don't pay attention to depth of field, and it looks like things are like climbing out of people's heads. So again, this is why a narrow depth of field can sometimes be highly desirable. Again, you can see in this extremely fast shutter speed, I'm guessing this was shot at like 1/8000th of a second, or even faster, 1/16,000th of a second. You can see that the depth of field actually is extremely narrow. Like the edge of the glass over here is totally out of focus, and the front of the edge of the glass is also starting to get out of focus. So we're talking only about like an inch, maybe 1.5 inches of actual range of focus for depth of field. And what that allowed is, by having such a big aperture, the photographer could have a very fast shutter speed time. Right? So now we understand, again, what depth of field means and what narrow depth of field means, and how this is kind of sometimes not always a drawback, but a benefit.